Il a créé sur Internet un site qui s'appelle Naked Capitalism, le capitalisme mis à nu. C'est Tim Smith. Bien le machisme des financiers, Susan Webberiä a pensé qu'elle serait plus crédible en prenant un nom d'esprit.
The big change in behavior started in the 1980s, although really the foundation was set in 1970. All the firms used to be partnerships. The New York Stock Exchange rules require the firms to be partnerships. And if you're a partnership in the United States, you can lose all your money. In general, corporate America was much more conservative and proper. I mean, even though there was still bad behavior, there was some notion there were limits to the bad behavior.
En 1999, révolution. Goldman Sachs a besoin d'argent et se vend par action à la bourse. Maintenant, les gestionnaires ne sont plus responsables personnellement si la banque perd de l'argent. C'est la raison profonde du changement de comportement. Et au même moment, les lois qui obligeaient les banques à une certaine prudence sont supprimées par le président Clinton. Avant, on appelait Goldman Sachs la tortue, tellement la banque était prudente. Aujourd'hui, on la traite de vampire.
What happened from the 1980s and much more in the 1990s was first in the 80s, the bond business grew to be much more important. And that continued into the 1990s. And it became much more important and much more profitable. Riskier too, but bigger and more profitable. The second is that the derivatives business grew up. And the derivatives business is very lightly regulated. And that started becoming a very big business in the 1990s. And so these two areas that were very profitable and where the regulations were very low, and suddenly were making a lot of money, meant that you had traders become more important. And traders are predators. I mean, traders will take whatever they can from somebody else. You know, they operate by a kind of rule of the jungle, that everybody out there is, you know, if somebody is foolish enough to buy something at a bad price, that's their problem. And so you have these people become more powerful in the firm. That mentality starts to drive the firm more than it used to. I mean, for example, at Goldman, the traders call the people on the investment banking side socialists because they get paid on a team basis. Everything is backwards. You know, finance is supposed to be about, you know, first thing, it's supposed to be a service business. It's supposed to support industry, and it's supposed to help the economy grow. And therefore, you know, they shouldn't take too much. You know, if they take too much, it's no longer a support, it's more like a parasite. But then now we have the second problem, that it's much more profitable to destroy rather than to make money, if you in the normal fashion.
Does Goldman Sachs have any influence of the United States government?
I think you'd be crazy to think that they didn't. The question is, how much more influence do they have than other players? There's good reason to think they have quite a lot. I mean, you obviously have all these famous names that have had very prominent government positions. Of course, you've got, you know, Bob Rubin and Hank Paulson being the most famous.
Robert Rubin, qui dirigeait Goldman Sachs, est devenu le ministre des Finances de Bill Clinton. Son successeur, Henry Paulson, a suivi le même trajet quand George W. Bush est devenu président. En 2008, Henry Paulson a organisé le plus grand sauvetage de banques jamais réalisé et a veillé à ce que Goldman Sachs en profite largement. À l'arrivée de Barack Obama, de nombreux dirigeants de Goldman entrent à la Maison-Blanche et au gouvernement. Et lorsque certains deviennent les gendarmes des marchés, ça revient à nommer un renard pour protéger le poulailler. Et en sens inverse, on voit des ministres, des procureurs devenir des employés de Goldman Sachs. Leur état d'esprit s'étend sur la planète tout entière. Ils sont des centaines à occuper des postes clés. Le gouverneur de la Banque du Canada, le ministre du Commerce du Nigeria, un des dirigeants de la Banque d'Angleterre, tous viennent de Goldman. Et le nouveau président de la Banque Centrale Européenne, Mario Draghi, est lui, un ancien vice-président de Goldman Sachs Europe. Je viens d'apprendre qu'un groupe va essayer de manifester à l'intérieur d'une banque banque qui fait de jolis bénéfices et ne paie pas d'impôts. La seule télévision présente, c'est la télévision russe. Les Russes adorent quand il y a un problème en Amérique. J'aimerais rencontrer les journalistes du New York Times qui, les premières, ont averti des fraudes de Goldman Sachs. Gretchen Morgenson termine d'écrire un livre et Louise Story accepte de nous rencontrer. C'est grâce ou à cause de ces deux journalistes que Goldman Sachs a été condamné en 2010 à payer une amende de 550 millions de dollars pour avoir abusé ses clients. Et aussitôt, l'action de Goldman Sachs a baissé de 15%.
How do you feel when Goldman Sachs says that their share might go down because of you and other journalists?
Goldman shares do not go down because of journalists or stories or articles. They go down because of things that Goldman does or because of things that the government does. What we do is we tell the stories and we look for the facts. When the financial markets ran into grave trouble, there wasn't enough money for everyone. And what you saw at Goldman as well as some other banks is you saw them make some decisions that benefited Goldman but did not benefit their clients. And it occurred in all different sorts of ways. So one way that it occurred was with a hospital in Pittsburgh. And that hospital had bought something called auction rate securities from Goldman. And these are basically short-term investments that are supposed to roll over in auctions all the time. But that market dried up at the beginning of 2008, and Goldman was actually the first bank to pull out, helping it to dry up. But one of its customers was a hospital in Pittsburgh, and that hospital had asked Goldman months before, should we leave this market? And Goldman said, stay. And then when the market dried up, that customer alone was left to bear the loss. At the same time that Goldman was marking down these mortgage bonds, Goldman had its own position, its own negative bet on the mortgage market. Its customers did not know that Goldman was not a neutral broker. The more it marked its customers down, the more that short negative bet benefited Goldman. At the end of 2006, they had a big long position, which means Goldman was betting on the future of the housing market. And in the beginning of 2007, it was very hard to get rid of all of that position. They got rid of a lot, but they could not get rid of all. And so what they did was they built what they called the Big Short, which was a big negative bet that helped offset a lot of that long. And in 2007, it led to a substantial profit for Goldman. Now, Goldman would point to some losses in 2008, but I have been told by a lot of my sources that then they made profits on it in 2009, and they won't release those numbers. But the bottom line is, Goldman had a big short. Other banks did not have the big short. Other banks spiraled and suffered and bled, but Goldman survived strong and much more better because of this negative bet they put in place even while their customers suffered.
Je voulais aussi parler d'AIG, la plus grosse société d'assurance du monde qui avait fait faillite. Quel était le rôle de Goldman Sachs? Est-ce que Louise le savait? Every story AIG a l'air d'avoir été une marionnette manipulée par Goldman Sachs.
Well, AIG got itself into all these very complex insurance deals with a lot of big banks, including Goldman Sachs. And what AIG gave them was insurance policies, essentially, that said, if those mortgage securities decrease in value, we, AIG, will pay you. Just like, if your house burns down, the insurance company might pay for it. So these were insurance policies on financial instruments. And what happened, of course, is the mortgage securities did collapse. And as they collapsed, Goldman was the first and foremost to demand all this cash from AIG. It was saying, give us more money, give us money. These are going down in value. Remember, at the same time, Goldman had its big short on. So Goldman profited on its short. It demanded cash from AIG. The market did go down. And all of that cash drained the life out of AIG. And that's why in the fall of 2008, the federal government had to bail out AIG. The only thing is, at the time in 2008, it was kept a secret that all that money went to the banks. It only came out later that this had been sort of a backdoor bailout to the banks through AIG.
And in fact, if Goldman was really so smart, they should have realized that hurting AIG really was going to